Welcome back. In today's class, we will discuss about the demand continuation topic, the movement along the demand curve and shift in the demand curve. Before we could continue with this topic, let me remind you about the determinants of demand. Why do people demand various goods and services? That is, that the amount of a good that the consumer chooses depends on the price of the good, the prices of the other goods, income of the consumer, and taste and preferences of a consumer. So let me tell you the demand function. Demand function is a relation between the amount of the good and its price when other things remain constant. We will discuss what is the demand curve. So demand curve is a graphical representation of a demand function. So the demand function says that the law of demand, higher the prices, the demand is less, and lower the prices, the demand is more. Thus, any change in price leads to movements along the demand curve. So first, let us see what is movement along the demand curve. The demand curve is a graphical representation of the demand function. When the price is less, the demand is more, and when the price is more, the demand is less. Thus, any change in price leads to movement along the demand curve. In the law of demand, we have seen when the price is more, the demand is less. Here, the demand curve slopes downwards from left to right. And in this, any changes in the price, when the prices changes, the movement will take place in the demand curve. So what kind of a movement will take place in the demand curve, we'll see with the help of a diagram. So in this diagram, you can see OX axis and OY axis. On the OX axis, quantity demand is represented. On OY axis, price is represented. Now, you know this diagram depicts the demand curve. So, the demand curve slopes downward from left to right. That is, D is a demand curve. And how the movement is taking place, you can see here on the OY axis P1 and P2, and on the OX axis you can see Q1 and Q2. So when the price is more, that is when the price is P1, the demand is Q1. That means when the price is more, the demand is less. You can observe the price is this much and demand will be lesser. When the price is more, demand is less. When the price decreases from P1 to P2, the demand increases from Q1 to Q2. The demand is increasing. When the demand increases, when the price decreases from Q1 to Q2. So you can observe in this diagram that when the price is P1, the demand was Q1. That means the price is more, demand is less. When the price decreased from P1 to P2, the demand increased from Q1 to Q2. So here what is happening in the demand curve means the demand curve movements is taking place. How the demand, here you can observe point A and B. So when the movement is taking place, how the movement is taking place? The movement is taking place upward and downward. The movement is taking place upward and downward. How this movement upward and downward is taking place? When the price is more, that is P1, What is happening to the demand? Demand is contracting. Contracting means shrinking. That is reducing. The demand is less. When the price is more. When the price is more, the demand is less. That is leads to contraction in the demand curve. Now, when the price is less, that is when the price from P1 to P2 when it reduces, the demand increases from Q1 to Q2. That means the demand is expanding. So what happened to the movement now? The movement, because of price, the movement of the demand curve is going upward and the downward. So when the price is high, the demand is contracting. When the price is less, the demand is more. At that time, the demand curve movement is expanding. This is called movement along the demand curve. So why the movement is taking place in the demand curve? Because of price. So when the price changes, when the price is changing, either increasing and decreasing, here what will happen means the movement of the demand curve takes place. So that is called as movement along the demand curve, leads to expansion. This point is contraction and this point is expansion. Why the expansion in the demand curve is taking place? Price is less. Why the demand curve is contracting, becoming less? Because the price increases. So expansion and contraction takes place. The next concept is shifts in the demand curve. That is, on the other hand, changes in any of the other. Already I told you the determinants are price of the other goods, income of a consumer, taste and preferences. These are the 4 determinants. In that, number 1 we have seen price. So when the price changes, the movement along the demand curve takes place. Apart from price, changes in any of the other things like income of a consumer, price of the related goods, that means substitutes and complementary goods, and taste and preferences leads to shift in the demand curve. Other than, except price. If changes in other factors, what are the other factors? Price of a related goods, income of a consumer, taste and preferences. If these things changes, what will happen? The demand curve will start shifting. So that concept we call it as a shift in the demand curve. We will see how the shift is taking place with the help of a diagram. So shift in the demand curve. You can observe OY axis representing price and OX represents quantity demand. So here the red line which is representing original demand curve. And suppose if there is a increase in income, if the income increases, what will happen means the demand curve shifts upward, D2. Suppose if I like apple, demand for apple will increase, that is taste. So when I like the taste, the demand for apple increases. At that time, what will happen? The demand curve will shift rightward. The demand curve is shifting rightward, which is representing D2, D2. When the income is more, my demand will shift rightward, that is upward. The demand will shift upward when the income increases, when taste and preferences increases by the consumer. So when the taste and income of a consumer increases, the demand curve shifts upward or rightward. So demand curve is shifting upward or rightward from the original demand curve. Now, when the income was 5,000, income is represented as Y. When the income was 5,000, the consumer demand will be less. When the income increases to 50,000, the demand will be increased. Now, when the income is decreased to 15,000, from 50,000 to 15,000, when income decreases, here the demand curve shifts downward. That is D1, D1. The demand curve is shifting downward or left. Why? Because the income of a consumer is less. Again, when the taste, if I suppose I don't like mango, what will happen to the demand curve? The demand curve will shift downward, that means leftward. So in this case, the demand curve shifts rightward and leftward. So we call this as income and taste, which is making the demand curve shift on right and leftward. So thank you for watching. If you have any doubts, you can call me and clarify the doubts.